Was an early casualty of this general election, but there's a precedent, and it comes from a land down under. Canberra may be a long way from Westminster, Australia's Parliament building more modernist in style than Gothic, and the sunshine more reliable. But the electoral campaign now convulsing Britain was foreshadowed by last May's Australian election.
I have always believed in miracles.
Scott Morrison's win was only miraculous because he was expected to pay the price for Conservative chaos. He'd risen to be incumbent Prime Minister after a bloodless coup deposed his predecessor Malcolm Turnbull. And going to the polls, the opposition Labor Party, led by Bill Shorten, was confident of victory. How Scott Morrison and his team blocked Labor and won is a cautionary tale for the UK. The campaign was targeted, relentless, voters bombarded by digital ads and memes through their Facebook pages and phones, at peak by something new every 20 minutes. It may well sound familiar because members of that campaign team have now taken their franchise from ScoMo in Australia to Bojo in Britain, most notably Kiwi digital duo Ben Guerin and Sean Topham and Australian Isaac Levido. Isaac Levido has played a role in previous general elections as well as mayoral contests, not all of them successful, but this is the first campaign he's led. He emerged from the stable of Sir Linton Crosby to assume the senior role in the Johnson campaign after his success on the team that flipped the Australian election. So I ran into the Prime Minister in the corridors of Parliament. As it happens, he was wearing no shoes and carrying his goggles at the time. He was on his way to the swimming pool. But nevertheless, I asked him about Isaac Levido, and he called him his data guy. He said that he was the one who oversaw the research that guided the campaign and helped with the targeting of the digital team, Topham Guerin. He called him the quiet one, and not surprisingly, said he was very good at his job.
The keys to the success of the 2019 campaign were essentially targeting the other side with negative messages and scare messages, and offering nothing other than sort of gentle reassurance that the government was not going to change anything, and presenting this very benign picture of just one person, which was the Prime Minister.
The campaign relentlessly contrasted opposition leader Bill Shorten with an honourable, everyman version of Scott Morrison. He was just an ordinary family man who wants you to keep your job and your savings.
You have been told a lie by people smugglers.
Scott Morrison's hard man history, like the time he stood as immigration minister and talked tough to asylum seekers, was scrubbed. Labor leader Bill Shorten was painted as a Bill Australia couldn't afford, who posed risks and would increase taxes. The memes and ads, often rudimentary and always repetitive.
Taxation, tax expenditure, taxation.
While Levido interpreted research and developed strategy to narrowcast issues for maximum effect, Guerin and Topham focused on volume, variety and speed, churning out at the peak of the campaign something new every 20 minutes. They were poised to pounce.
Issues that would otherwise have gone unnoticed. Every campaign has blunders, right? Every campaign has blunders. But by being able to capitalise on them and turn these blunders into viral moments that stuck with people's perception of particular candidates, that's how you change people's minds.
Vote Labor and a retiree tax is on the horizon.
Of course, you can also change people's minds by misleading them. When Labor proposed to remove some tax refunds for retired shareholders, the Morrison campaign recast that as a broad Labor tax on retirees.
That was devastating.
So it was greatly exaggerated.
Greatly exaggerated.
But it hit home.
It hit home, and then there was this other idea of a death tax. There was no policy to do that. But, you know, the two things dovetailed quite nicely together. One of them was an exaggeration, one of them was just a straight-out lie.
He's the only one talking about a death tax. A death tax?
When Labor came out to denounce the lie, there was no death tax. It rebounded. Edited in such a way, Labor seemed to be proclaiming a tax rather than denying one. There seemed no mechanism to set the record straight. Laura Tingle recalls another scare campaign that converted a Labor target for electric cars to ads targeting tradesmen, warning them that Labor was coming for their beloved utes or work vehicles.
If you went onto a Facebook page and if you had ever shown any interest, for example, in a Toyota car, an ad would pop up saying Labor will take your Toyota ute. So it was really quite clever, and we were starting to see some of that about halfway through the campaign. How you measure the effectiveness of that, of course, is really difficult, but it was really, really targeted to very specific groups of voters.
For those out campaigning on the road, it all just felt like a well-disciplined operation. Morrison ally and newly appointed ambassador to Washington, Arthur Sinodinos, says they had a plan and they stuck to it.
Scott Morrison had gone out early and defined himself in the public mind before his opponents could define him, and then it became a compare and contrast between him and Bill Shorten, who'd been opposition leader for 5.5 years and clearly had negatives. The strategy came together actually quite well. Isaac Levito, all of these people, they were working away for 12 months on the plan.
What does this mean for the UK? Well, you're already seeing it online, in your Facebook feed and on your television screens. A campaign style tried and tested in New Zealand and Australia, now playing out in the UK.
Katie Morris reporting. Now to